How are you?
I am good. Yeah. We're in Detroit in the winter. I'm it's much like uh the job is kind of a hockey consultant. That's how I got
Yeah,
my visa to stay in the States.
yeah.
And it's working with a prep school. So we have about 10 teams I have to look after, and I have to
Yeah,
coach one.
yeah.
And so yeah, it's kind of like same old at 61 years old.
Well, Fred, I've been looking forward to today because I've been thinking about how I was going to introduce you and everything, and you've been part of my life for a long time in one way or
Yeah,
another. Like we haven't lost touch. So, dude, I'm just so happy to catch up with you, man. I know it's a podcast, but I'm just
yeah.
really happy to see your face.
Yeah, and so am I to see yours. And I'm glad that you're doing really well. I follow everything pretty much. Like Vic says, I'm not on the computer a whole lot or like the phone. It's just kind of come and go because we're so busy in the winter. But I follow your stuff and I see you're doing really well. And I'm proud of you, bud.
Well, thanks a lot, Fred. I appreciate it because it's funny when I think back about my journey and I think about the times that we were teammates in Guildford. And if I remember right, you and Tomo sat next together, and then I sat on the other side of Tomo.
That's right.
And yeah, you were just such a great guy. You were always so kind and generous and just welcoming with your advice and everything. But it was actually around that time that I started to struggle.
Right.
um, but I never had a voice. I didn't have a language to ask for help. And I think this is what this podcast wants to be, is a way to let people understand that other people have struggles, and
Yeah.
that there's people out there to reach out and ask for help,
Yeah.
so like it wants to be a podcast for the purpose.
Right. Well, that's the ironic thing about that is, Nick, is that see, I didn't even see that with you. You know what I mean? And it's even though we're males and we're in this, tough sport, it's really important to reach out to people, and not like I look at my side of the family, like, I've had my struggles. Like there was one time, like over in the UK, I was pretty depressed, like I don't want to mention like where I had to play or what I had to do, but I just kind of felt like, what's my purpose here? Is it just scoring goals? And I kind of worked myself out of that with some therapy, like back home in Canada, like seeing a sports psychologist. And I think I really, really felt because again, you didn't want to reach out to help with just friends because they're like, you know what, you're just down because
The
you're
weather.
playing, yeah, the way,
Yeah.
or you're not on the golf course enough, or whatever. But when you deal with certain real issues, it's tough, and it's really nice today to see that people can reach out and get help when they need it and be open about it. And I know, like my younger son's had some struggles because he's had up and down career in the National League, and he was going through something similar. When you get scratched, when you're not playing, and I know that's at a totally different level, but he's had friends that were like, you know, I don't want to mention the name, but the guy was like a first round pick to Tampa Bay. He was an 89 birth date, and he completely quit hockey. And simply because he told Brendan that he was tired of seeing his name being scratched. Here he is at the highest level making $1 million a year and, had to get professional help for it. And I know he used to reach out to Brendan a lot because he's kind of a deep kid
Yeah.
and he gets all this stuff. And I'm really, really, I'm happy to see that kind of stuff going on today.
Yeah.
With people that struggle with different things, whether it's addictions, whether it's depression, anxiety, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Um, and back to my original little story, Nick, what I found was once I got to Guildford, I felt more of a purpose. Although I knew I was on the back nine of my career, I felt more of a purpose because I felt like I was giving back more
Mhm.
to help kids and, not just going out and scoring goals and making a living and support my family. And I think that's kind of the direction my life took when I got back home to Canada and the States. It's really about just helping kids in our sport, whether they can
Yeah.
afford it, or you're teaching, or and that goes in all different avenues, because now they're dealing with all these issues and you're kind of a little part of it helping them, and I feel really good about that, honestly.
That's beautiful, Fred, and we're going to get into it. I'm gonna, as mentioned, I'm going to break this podcast into three periods. So the first period, we're going to talk about you growing up in Canada in Sault Ste. Marie, falling in love with the game. Second period, we're going to talk about your pro career in the UK, and then the third period, we're going to talk about exactly what we're kind of getting on right now is like purpose after we play, dealing with the hanging up of the skates. So without further ado, I'm going to drop the puck and I'm going to start my 20-minute countdown timer. Hold on 2 seconds. And I'm going to say, let's tell us, Fred, tell us what it was like growing up for you in Sault Ste. Marie, and what was your first chances getting on the ice?
Yeah, so growing up in Sault Ste. Marie, Nick, it's a real big hockey town. We lived in the west end of the city, kind of like where the Espositos, the Nannies, Ronnie Francis grew up. It was a real hockey area. Very, very cold. A lot of our dads worked in the steel mill. It was kind of like an Italian community, because a lot of the Italians came off the boat. That's where they found work, got their visas in Canada. But for myself personally, my dad played hockey, always made a backyard rink, the school rink. Um, and I fell in love with the game. I used to watch the game once a week as a kid on Saturday nights, hockey night in Canada. And then we used to watch Channel 50 Detroit Red Wing games on Wednesdays. So that's how I first fell in love with it. But skating wise, I think it's almost like every kid growing up in Canada. You start skating around 2 or 3 years old. And I was just one of those kids that was obsessed with the sport, always out on the rink. My mom had to drag me off the rink. Always play with a lot of older friends. And obviously with the Espositos and those kind of guys growing up in Sault Ste. Marie, it was easy to follow somebody and have a light and say, I really like to do that one day. And I think that was a big inspiration for me to see these guys that came from our area in Sault Ste. Marie really make it, like the Boston Bruins, Chicago Blackhawks, what have you, Minnesota. I seen all this happening, and that's how I basically fell in love with the sport.
Whenever anyone talks about those first, like growing up and getting on the ice at 2 and 3 years old, I remember, I think I was 3 years old. I was in Pontiac, Saskatchewan, on this like frozen barn. It was a barn during the summer, and then they froze it so that pieces of hay were sticking out of the ice. And I'm only three. And I remember putting my hand, I had those little bob skates on, the ones you
Yeah,
strap to your shoes.
yeah,
And I just remember touching the ice and going,
yeah, yeah,
cold. And I'm three, but that memory is so
yeah,
visceral in me, and
yeah,
it's just one of those things, like those early times where, like when you and I played, like the equipment was like horsehair and leather, shin pads and
yeah.
stuff like that, and the
Well,
smell.
yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
funny you say that, because one of my first memories was, I was probably about 5 years old, and my dad just flooded the ice. It was after it was like a Saturday night, and so I get out on the ice, and I'm just hearing my skates, like the edges hit the cold ice, kind of waddling around, and then I go and stick my tongue on the net, on the back of the net, and my tongue gets stuck. And I'll never forget that memory. That was the last time I did that. And I thought, when I ripped my tongue off there, I thought my tongue was stuck on the goalpost there, the crossbar. Those memories are, I cherish those days. I really do.
Dude, I just thought of Dumb and Dumber, the movie Dumb and Dumber, when he
Yeah,
licks the pole when he's skiing and his tongue.
yeah,
But and you just did it yourself? No one
I,
teased you into doing
I
it?
just, I panicked and just pulled my, I think back in the day too, people would come over with water and throw. I think that's probably the worst thing to do unless it's warm, But you just panicked and boom, pull your mouth back, and luckily it wasn't. There was no real damage there.
So I think about, like, I never had a frozen backyard, but there was always the ice got packed enough to be snowy, and I just remember going outside with a tennis ball and a stick, and just and I would go inside and Saturday night watch one period of hockey on Hockey Night in Canada. Then I would come outside during intermissions and I would kind of pretend I was in the game that I was watching, and I'd be like, mimicking what I was watching. Or it was probably Gretzky, in the mid 80s and stuff like that, against the Islanders. And it was just so much fun. I had just as much fun watching it as to go outside and mimicking it. And it was just it was when they say play, like, it was the real word of play. It was like complete joy. Like,
Yeah.
do you remember those in the early
Oh,
days, and how you, like, what did it feel like, and was it in the organized hockey, or was it the stuff on the ponds?
it was the stuff on the ponds, definitely, Nick. It was the outdoor rinks, the school rinks, the backyard rink. Exactly what you said. You watch hockey, get inspired by somebody, some big name, some player, and then you try to emulate what they did, whether it was a shot, a move, how they skate. And then the other thing was, I like you're not self-centered and say, oh, I was the only kid that did that. There was a lot of us. So we had a ton of kids to play with. And that's where we learned how to, that's where we would meet, whether it was like in between periods. Hey, let's all meet over after the first period, after the Leaf game. Let's get out on St. Mary's rink or whatever. And, I'm talking guys like Ronnie Francis, who's had a great career, a lot of guys from our area. And we would play with dads and older brothers and sisters and siblings and just whoever showed up. And it was it was never really organized. It just happened. And that's where the joy was for me. And whether it was going off on your own with a ball or a puck, or whether it was just drop the ball and everybody play,
Hmm.
it was pure joy, pure fun. Nobody talked about, money or, this or that. It was a little boy's dream just to play a
Hmm.
sport that everybody in Canada loved. And I think the other thing that was very infectious, our town was so hockey related. You could check the history of our town, this little small Sault Ste. Marie with all these players in our OHL Sioux Greyhound team. And it was just like, it was like religion. I guess it'd be like football in the UK. A lot of kids want to play for Chelsea, Man United, whatever. How do they start? Where do they go to? They watch TV, they get inspired. Their parents might push them one way into this academy, that academy, but we didn't have any of that. We just went out on the pond and played. We didn't get pushed into an academy. We just played because you're like, one day you're thinking, I want to wear that Red Wing shirt. I want to wear that Maple Leaf shirt. That's the inspiration we had,
Hmm.
and not only that, those days there too. That's where all our friendships were made. I think of our neighborhood friendships, and Nick, we actually have a group called Memory Lane right now. It's comes from my grade 8 class, the area where I grew up. We were all 13 years old, and we meet once or twice a summer. It's really cool. Like, we had 22 girls in our class and 11, 12 boys. And so I asked them a lot of questions how I was when I was a kid. And they said, you were definitely going to be a hockey player because that's all you thought about and talked about and played. You would play night and day, night and day. Because my mom and dad aren't alive anymore. We have pictures and little projection films and stuff like that. But, it's good to get those reminders. And I realized how much time I actually put in the game, just having fun with it and playing. I don't know about yourself, but we'd be out there like on Saturday when we didn't have to go to school. We'd be out there all morning, go in for lunch, all afternoon, go watch the NHL game, whoever was playing that night, and then back out maybe in between periods. And we would do this all winter because there are long, cold winters in Sault Ste. Marie.
Well, I remember, like, my dad having to pick me up after school when it was like gone dark, and he'd be really mad at me because I'd be on the ice. They'd turn the lights out. There'd be me, one other guy named Chris, and we would just shoot a tennis ball across the ice, at each other trying to score. And I would get in trouble for being out too late and missing dinner. But it kind of brings me into the fact that like you grew up in Sault Ste. Marie and the Greyhounds and all those amazing hockey players. When did you first start going watching? Because this is something that, as you were talking, it reminded me of when I started to like think that I would like to play hockey on an organized level. Is I would go down to the old barn in Saskatoon where the Blades would used to play, and it was a really unique place. The way the puck sounded on the boards was like this amazing thud, and guys like Wendell Clark and Mark Habscheid and Kelly Chase and um, Kelly Kaminsky, like these guys who all made it into the show. We would watch them in the Cooper all days, with the pants.
Yeah. I've been through those days.
Yeah, and that's when I was like, wow, I'd like to play this. I never really thought about playing in the NHL, but I was like, I really want to play this. When did you like start going and watching games and getting really lit up and going on, like from playing to I want to play, I want to be a hockey player.
Yeah. Well, so I think as you move up the pedigree, so Nick, at 8 years old was my first year playing hockey. A lot of kids play at 5. I probably played 4 years of hockey, like night and day in the backyard. So I used to play once a week at the McMeekin Center, and that was our only indoor game. And then as you move up the ladder, my second year Pee Wee, we had you make like a travel team. It'd be a AAA team today, but in those days they call it a tournament team. So that's when I really started going down to the Greyhound games with my buddies and my brother and and just watching these guys. And then what I realized was like how good the hockey was, but I wanted to watch these guys practice. So I used to go down and walk to the rink after school and watch the Sioux Greyhounds practice. And fortunately, when I was 12, there were so many good hockey players. Like I used to watch their habits, how fast they used to skate, and how hard they used to work. And then along comes a guy named Wayne Gretzky, plays in our town. And then that's when I totally got obsessed because you didn't realize, you knew how good he was. And then, when guys got points and goals and it's always in the paper, on the news or on TV, then you realized how good he was. So I used to go watch him practice. And he used to have, that style of his. So you try to emulate that, and that was probably the wrong way to skate. He was like one in a. But watching all these kind of guys, I learned so much. And true story, Nick, I remember one of the first games I went to, a Greyhound game. I was 12 years old. My dad's friend took me and my brother. And there was in those days, the handlebar bikes. There was a bike. It was thrown in the lottery for like you buy 50-50 tickets. And then they threw a bike into an extra package of tickets to support local hockey teams or whatever. So my dad's friend says to Ronnie and I, my brother, you guys want a ticket? We said, sure. So he buys us a ticket. So Ronnie has one, I have one. They're playing the Toronto Marlies that night, the Sioux Greyhounds. And I used to hear about the Marlies all the time because the Howe sons were playing for them. And Gordie Howe was like, a big legend of ours growing up. So anyways, don't I win the bike? So I got to go down there. I meet some of the Marley players, the Greyhound players, take a picture for the Sioux Star, get the bike. And it's so ironic. Like I was so happy to win that bike, but I think I was happier just to meet those guys, at 12 years old. And sure enough, lo and behold, I end up getting drafted by the Marlies and playing for them like 4 years later, but it was almost like it was like a direction for me. Like it was like, is somebody trying to tell me something here? But that's when I really, really fell in love watching the closest thing to pro hockey for me. Besides seeing it on TV. So watching it firsthand, and I'll never forget like watching Wayne Gretzky practice, how good he really was and how hard he really worked at 16 years old. I used to watch this guy feather passes from like coming over the blue line, doing that button hook that he's famous for and hitting Yeri Curry. I used to watch him doing that in junior and hit guys on the side of the net, empty nets, Nick, giving them empty nets. He had like 100 assists in junior. I think both his line mates had 50 goals, and then you never heard of them ever again.
I was fortunate enough to watch Gretzky with the Rangers in the playoff series against the Devils. I think 2 years before he retired, and he did that exact pass to Esa Tikkanen, and
Right.
he was being trapped. He did the little button hook, and he did this, but it was going up and up and up, and I was like, "There's no way that puck's going to get down on his stick," and it just went whoosh, as Esa Tikkanen just crosses the blue line and then goes in and shelves it over Brodeur's glove hand. Like how he could control that puck in the air, like he was a magician, right?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, so say if the Greyhounds practice 4 to 5:30, Gretz would be on the ice another half an hour, and I
Mm-hmm.
watch him do all this stuff in practice. So yeah, he's very talented, very smart, and one in a million to play the game. But he practiced all those things, and
Yeah.
I try to take those stories on to kids today, saying that's that's the craft he had. But he probably still it just didn't come naturally because he wanted to do that. He practiced and practiced those button hooks, those turns, those feather passes,
Mm-hmm.
for
When did you start getting, like, when was your first uniform? And what was it? What were those feelings that you got when you started to get into a changing room with a bunch of kids your age, and that journey
yeah,
from you watching to 4 years later getting
yeah.
drafted by the Marlies?
Yeah, my first uniform, my first team was Dubriel Lumber, and they had a hockey puck. We had like the Philadelphia Flyer colors. We had a hockey puck with two hockey sticks, and you had your number in the middle. I wore number 9, and I was so proud of that shirt. That was the first thing that came out of my bag, and I had it in my room, either hung up. That was my very first hockey jersey, and yeah, it's such a good feeling to be on a team in a dressing room and having all you and your friends at 8 years old wear the same uniform. And like we didn't have the socks or the pants; we just had the sweater. That was it.
Who did your dad come in and help you with your skates?
Yeah, he did. He did
Yeah.
for mom or my dad or somebody's dad always helped us. But we got to an age where we'd be out at Central Park. It's actually called Esposito Park now, where I go to the rink and they'd have a shack, and we get this kind of was like a little further out of the end of my town because we always skated at, like I said, my backyard rink or St. Mary's rink. But this was kind of like, I don't know, 5 blocks down the road, and they had a shack there. It was city owned. And I remember kids coming in there. One in particular, Gussie Greco. He ended up playing the OHL, played a little pro. This guy used to tie his skates like at 8, 9, 10 years old because his mom or dad were never around. So I used to tell my dad that, and he goes, "Yeah, I know his family. They were all good hockey players." So Nick, I started trying to tie my skates on my own then, without having my parents around. It was kind of like that feeling of you didn't really know what independency was then, but just about being a, a real hockey player, even if they were loose. And so I used to experiment till I was about 11 or 12. Then I started tying my own, no parents around type of thing. So,
Yeah, yeah. What did it feel like being in a changing room? Like you mentioned about with being kids your own age. What was that buzz like? Like before, obviously, I remember what it was like being in a changing room with you guys. But that was like semi-pro, pro hockey in the UK. What was it? We'll talk about that in the second period. But what was it like, that energy? When did you start to feel, wow, this is a team? And yeah, please
well,
just try to the memories
well,
around that.
what I remember is, like, Nick, coaching now, I see how important a locker room is. And I think when we were 8 years old, we didn't know that. But what I remember was how at the end of the game, win or lose, in our dressing room, it just felt like, when you burn anxiety off, how good you feel. You just felt so happy and just full of joy in the dressing room. Like, and I watch our dressing room today. I'm coaching a bunch of 15, 16-year-olds. It's very important. Like, our dressing room is it's disciplined, but they have a lot of fun in there. That's the time
Hmm.
to get their parents, do what they want to do, have a crack with each other. But I just felt pure joy after games in our dressing room. And win or lose, the parents all used to take a bunch of us, whether it was for an ice cream. In those days, it might have been a McDonald's, whatever. But pure joy. That's what I remember in our room, having
And
a
did
laugh, and then
what
not
were
worrying
you,
about
sorry,
school
bud.
or sorry. So not having to worry about going to school or homework, just pure joy about hockey, or
Yeah.
sport.
What about friendships? When were some of your early friendships with hockey guys?
I want to say our neighborhood was really tight, and my dad was a pretty big name in sports in Sault Ste.
Mm,
Marie, all around athlete. So, like, he always made the ice. So that automatically brought friendships to you because he made the ice in your backyard. So it was easy to have kids out there. And my mom and dad, they owned a corner store. And, we lived like 5 blocks. Our house was 5 blocks away from the corner store. In the corner store, we had a rink back there. So everybody would seem to congregate like from 5 years old to 13 years old at my mom and dad's store. And they'd hang out there, play hockey in the back. So it was easy to make a lot of friends then in the neighborhood. So, and we try to bring our kids up like that, Vic and
mm,
I, where, they're always around kids. Some kids, it's not a bad thing if you're alone. I don't know how they do it today. I think you have to be in a paid sport to have friends today. But our neighborhood was so big and close knit that it was just so easy to make friends, Nick.
mm.
Whether that was hockey or building go-karts in the summer or building tree forts or bush forts or swimming together at pools or it was just I was very fortunate to it wasn't about we didn't have a lot of money, but we just our friendships everybody just seemed to click. And you
Yeah.
always had a order, in school, who the smartest was. And you kind of congregated around. In hockey, you knew who one of the better athletes were. And that just seemed how it worked,
Yeah.
kind of fell into order. Or whether it was a kid that was 13 years old playing on your rink and you were 8, you knew to respect them,
Yeah.
um, and emulate them or whatever, So friendships for me, I would say about 5 years old, started to
Yeah.
build a lot of school and rink friendships.
And then Fred, hockey got a little bit more serious for you. What were those last few years like playing organized hockey before you got drafted?
Yeah. So I think the very first year of serious hockey for me was at 12 years old playing on that tournament team.
Mm,
You kind of had the best kids on the city on that team, like a Ronnie Francis, a Normie Schmidt who played for Pittsburgh Penguins. Jim Ralph was our goalie. I don't know if you know Jimmy. He's very big in social media. He does the Leaf games on radio. So we had like about 6 or 7 guys on our Pee Wee team that end up playing the NHL. But that's when I realized how good our team was. And now you're traveling to all these away tournaments and winning them. That's when hockey really got serious for me. And then, Nick, the first 2 years of Bantam and the second 2 years of midget, it was all about, there was a lot of publicity, if you like, in our city in the paper about a team that does well. There were scoring championships. Unfortunately, that's when it got, I don't want to say more selfish, but really serious for me.
mm,
And so then you're kind of like on a top team, a top player. Then you realize, oh damn, like they start doing these rankings, and you're ranked up there. And Nick, when I was 15, I was ranked in the first round, and they had a minor midget draft. They only allowed 10 kids to get drafted in the minor midget draft. And I remember 2 or 3 years before me, Wayne Gretzky was one of those guys who went second overall as a 15-year-old. And I remember my dad saying, because North Bay, Ontario wanted to draft me, and they wanted to draft me like 8th overall as a 15-year-old. And my dad said, no, he's not ready yet. And the word got out around that I wouldn't leave Sault Ste. Marie, that I was homesick, hometown boy. So the next year was my actual draft year at 16. And I went in a later round because they simply thought I wasn't going to go away from home. And Toronto ended up drafting me. And that was a tough year for me going
mm,
away from, I was really homesick. And there was no way I was going back to the Sioux. I stuck it out. And then after that, it was easy traveling. But yeah,
mhm.
those, I would say between 12 and 15, that's when hockey got really, really serious. And I don't think we had the pressure we have today, the kids, because I'm coaching, I'm involved with it. I see the parent pressure. I see kids have agents at 13 years old. We didn't even know what an agent was until our
Mm.
NHL, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so there's, I'm thankful for that. You know,
Yeah.
if any pressure, it was outside pressure, not from our parents or our teammates or that, just maybe from bigger cities like Toronto and that, you know, when
Mhm.
you go, you start hearing the rumblings about, you know, that kid's a player, he can go play college hockey, he can go play OHL hockey, or they do a write up on you in the Toronto Star. That's when pressure started to come, you know?
Yep.
But yeah,
Okay. So, Fred, that's the end of the first period.
okay, great.
Okay. So now we're gonna have an intermission. I'm trying to remember back in Guildford. What would you do in the intermissions? I remember I would always have to go pee, so I'd have to
Yeah.
take all my stuff off. But what were the things that you would do?
Well, yeah, you know what, Nick? I was I was a stickler with my sticks. You
Yeah.
know, I think I went and played with my sticks a little bit. Probably undid my laces, you know, around my ankle. Made sure you know, I was older than I like when I played with you. I was between 32 and 35 years old, so I'd really do a lot of stretching there. You know, and then sometimes if a game was going really good, you know, just giggle with the guys. You know,
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
lot guys, you know,
Yeah.
that thing. But I think the biggest thing is I was a stickler with my sticks. I always played with them, you know,
Yeah.
always like in those days, Nick, we didn't have patterns like they have today where everything is perfect. You know, we had the composite
The,
came along and the blades, you know, and if our
yeah.
blades, remember Charbonneau used to get all our blades for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so probably be shaving sticks down with sandpaper and you know taping them a
Yeah.
certain, you
Well,
know.
you guys all had all your own ones. I just got Terry Kurtenbach's hand-me-downs.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes getting somebody else's stick was actually better because
Yeah.
some of the patterns weren't the right patterns anyways.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Um.
that's
All
funny.
right. Let's head into the second period now, Fred. I'm going to start the clock. Um. Let's do it, and let's go with it. Let's go with how you became a professional hockey player. You getting drafted, and then what was it like? What was it like knowing that you were actually going to make a living out of this game?
Well, Nick, a lot of things happen really fast. You know, as I said, I get drafted to the Toronto Marlies, which was an OHL team. It was a very prestige team in Ontario. You know, we played out of Maple Leaf Gardens. We got to see the Leafs practice a lot, which brings you closer to that, like that next step. And so I was 17 when I was in Toronto. And then the following year at 18, excuse me, I got drafted to the Leafs. Um, and, you know, I think what made, I'm not going to say made the transition easier because, but being around that atmosphere, you kind of feel like I can live this, I can do this. But I think if I was stuck up in Sault Ste. Marie playing the OHL, you know, and that's 8-10 hours away from an NHL team and just still watching them on TV, you'd still be in awe of all of it, you know? So I think that was a big, an easier transition for me. But when I knew I was going to get drafted, well, I didn't know, but I had a really good year in my second year. And in those years, Nick, that was the first year of the underage draft. That was like the first year. Like nowadays, everyone gets drafted at 18. The year that I got drafted, I think it was 79, 80. That was the first year of that. They used to sign 20-year-olds into the NHL. They used to draft, they had a small draft and draft 20-year-olds. So when I got drafted, there was so many good hockey players that were 19 getting drafted in the 18-year-old draft, like Paul Coffey was a first rounder, like names like that. So I went in later in the draft, and but I still had a good second year junior. Really kind of started coming out of my own and scoring goals in that league, and you know, playing the power play, special teams for some good coaches who really believed in me. And one of my coaches was Dave Chambers, and he coached in the NHL. And Jimmy Jones was one of my coaches. Martin, he played in the NHL. And so having those guys in your ear all the time saying, "Well, you know, you could do this, you could do that," you're like couple of steps away. So you got to keep driven here. You got to keep doing what you're doing. So that's what gave me the belief. So before you knew it, Nick, I was drafted, and my last year junior as a 19-year-old, I was getting called up on emergency recalls. And like guys like Laurie Boschman would get hurt, and they'd say, Fred, you're coming up today, because they weren't calling guys up from the American League, which were all good players, but they were playing out in the East Coast. When they say, we got this prospect here, let's move him in, see what he can do. Well, one thing led to the other, and games were going good. And then I signed a second round contract, which really helped me. It was a 3-year deal, 3 years and an option, but it came back to haunt me, Nick, because in those days, if things weren't going well, you couldn't get out of your contract. It was hard to get traded, and that's where you would get buried in the minors. And I think that's basically what happened to me. If you track record my NHL days, I did really well as an underage player, and I felt I belonged and signed a really good deal. And I loved the Leafs. And, even though there was these things back from the 50s and 60s going around, like the Leafs never liked Italians, Harold Ballard never liked Italians, all these stupid sayings and stuff. But I loved wearing the crest. I loved playing in that building. It was so special, Nick. I loved Maple Leaf Gardens. It was like my second home. And I knew everybody in there. I knew all the usherettes, all the ushers, all the players on the Leafs. So it was a home for me. But yeah, the transition went really easy, but my career didn't end up the way I wanted it to. But it was still, you can never take that away from somebody. And those memories, I can relive them in my head. My friends and family back up in the Sioux, they always remind you about those days. They were very, very special.
Yeah, I can't even imagine, Fred. Like just to for you to be able to put on that Toronto Maple Leafs jersey, it just and playing in the Gardens, it just like I can feel you have those memories, and no one's ever going to be able to take those away from you. You were an NHL hockey player, and you ended up being my teammate. So I'm so happy about it that I can say that I was teammates with Fred Perlini. And I want to get into that now. How did you end up in the UK?
So I was supposed to, so I think it was 1986. I went to the New York Rangers training camp in Westchester, New York. And so Phil Esposito was the general manager. There's a Sault Ste. Marie connection there. He wanted to send me to the minors in New Haven, the AHL. And Nick, I was done. In my heart, I was done. I was tired of the, I don't know if you want to call it politics or what have you, but I didn't want to play another year in the minors. So I told Phil, and he went crazy on me. I said, Phil, I'm going to Europe. He went nuts on me. He said, you're crazy packing it in now. You go to Europe, you're done. I said, well, I want to use my hockey as a platform to travel, maybe to make a little bit more money. I'm going to be getting married soon. I was dating Vic. And I said, I think this is the right direction to go for me. In hindsight, I wish I would have held on another year or two. In today's day and age, you could do that and go to another organization, do well. My day, it was hard to get out of your contract. It was hard. So if you've been kind of buried in the minors, then they're typically labeling you as an AHL player. So how I got to Europe was I told Phil that fly back home. My old coach was coaching in Italy, Dave Chambers, that coached me in the Marlies. Nick, he had 100,000 American League contract waiting for me in Italy. You know what we made in the UK in '86. We didn't make that kind of money. So, but I had to get my Italian passport. And they call you an Italo, and there's only 3 of them on a team. So you're kind of like gold dust. It's kind of like the Coopers in the UK when they were such good players. And you could play as, and yourself, and you could play as what did we call them in the UK then?
The dual nationals. And I think I was one of the first ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gold dust. So that's what it was in Italy. You were only allowed 3 of them. I don't remember the rules in the UK, Nick, but you would remember. But anyways, so I fly to Toronto. I go to the Italian embassy with my mother. I got medals from the war, that represent Italy. My grandfather's, so I bring their all their documents and my Italian heritage, culture, all the history of it. We go into the embassy and they basically turned my passport down. And we tried everything to get it and we couldn't get it. And they said, if it was a year before, you would have got this passport, no problem. But they're not giving them away anymore like that. They said they changed a lot of the rules. So basically, Nick, both my grandfathers moved to Canada. They didn't even know each other, worked in the steel mill, gave up their Italian citizenship in 1936. Both my parents were born in 36. So they wouldn't give me the Italian passport. So long story short, fly back to Toronto. I'm like, oh, what am I going to do now? I called Chris Kellen. Chris Kellen was a good friend from the Sioux. He said, Fred, I can get you a team in a minute. He says, I know for a fact my good friend Alex Dampier is looking for an import. And he's in Nottingham. Nick, I knew nothing about hockey in England or the UK. So I get a call from Alex. Alex says, Fred, come on over, have some fun. It's not going to be like the money you're used to making. But, our team's a young team. I think you'll have a lot of fun here. Something else opens up in Europe. We'll let you go, do your thing. So I go. And, what? I'll never forget this because I got to backdoor this story. One of the things he tried to entice me with was he's going, the ratio of women here is like 3 or 4 to 1. They're all good looking women. I go, Alex, that's not going to help me. I'm going with a girl that I'm in love with here. So we started laughing about that. But how that comes back, I'll tell you in a sec. But so anyways, I go to Nottingham. And I end up, no matter what the hockey was like, good or bad or whatever, I enjoyed my hockey again. Like the fans in Nottingham, I think that's what enticed me to stay in the UK because not every rink was like that old barn. I think they had 2,900 in there or something. But if you would come in there and you were playing for somebody and you did an end-to-end rush, they'd clap for you. They'd cheer for you. And it was just like, Vicky eventually came over in October. They treated her really well. It just felt like a really, really fun atmosphere. And I enjoyed my hockey again. It wasn't about scoring goals or I was playing with all these kids, Nigel Rhodes and all these guys. I come out of pro hockey and I'm like, I don't think it's not about them not being on the level that I was at playing, even like in the dressing room, whatever. You come out of pro hockey, it's a totally different atmosphere, so it kind of brought me back a little bit, and so that's how it started for me. And then lo and behold, Al Sims started getting a hold of me at the end of the year, going to Fife, and there was a little bit more money in the pot, and you could do this and that, and I was getting into golf, and that was kind of the mecca of golf, and that's how it all started. Going from one team to another. In hindsight, I wish I would have stayed in Nottingham a little bit longer. Tony Johnson was the general manager, but Nick, I was getting married and I had to make money. I had to come back to my family and her family and be justified that I can make a living over here to marry Vicky. Otherwise I have to go back to school or go back and work in the steel plant where guys were making, 50 to 100 grand a year, So I ended up staying and worked out okay in Fife. And, so besides scoring all those goals and what have you, yeah, that was all fun. And it was all part of signing bonuses or bonuses to make money. But I also thought there's got to be more to this. There's got to be more to this. And so that's where I started looking at guys like John Lawless, Gary Steffen, maybe step into a player coach's role, try to run an organization, be a not a bigger name in the sport. Yeah, make more money, but maybe give back more to the sport. And, because I figured if I'm just going to play 10 years on a good team and score 100 goals a year and win some trophies, I didn't look at that as challenging enough, or I didn't look at that as the main goal, if you like, I looked at it more of a bigger job opportunities to support my wife, and eventually kids coming along in a bigger role. And I really liked what Gary Steffen was doing. And I really liked what John Lawless was doing and Daryl Lipsy and Swindon. I really respected that. And that's the road I wanted to go. And it never really, really transpired. And I tried it. I tried it in Trafford. I tried it in Streatham. And I found out that you really need to have a real big backer behind you. Speaking to John after, because then if you're failing, you've got to get play. So, for example, going to Trafford, they had good players there. You would know some of them, and like Jed Smith and all the guys. But there, the minor hockey underneath it, there was no program. You needed more money into the sport to run the program, to have a good team, so more kids would play hockey. Then I go on to D-side, same aspect, and then I fell into Streatham, trying to do the same thing, and I liked Streatham, although rougher part, because there was a lot of hockey history there. So that's how I ended up starting jumping around, trying to find that. In the meantime, trying to keep my hockey up to par. Like I don't mean this in a egotistical way, but I think I could score goals with my eyes closed, no matter what kind of condition I was in. But that wasn't the main goal, Nick. And it wasn't until. Go ahead. You wanted to ask?
No, I was going to say, because I think the very first time I ever came across you, you were playing in Streatham, and I think I was playing for the Solent Vikings their very first year. And I think you were our first game. I think, was that when you had Brett Kelleher and Darren Singer?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And I don't know if you came to the island to play, but I was like a 19-year-old kid wearing a face mask. And
I remember that.
Ken Taggart, actually, he was the one that pulled for me to get the dual nationality, because I wasn't good enough to play as an import. I was a double-A bantam hockey player in Saskatoon, and then I got suspended because I had a bad temper, and I wasn't registered as a hockey player over the age of 16, even though I played a bit of junior B hockey. They never registered me. So when they looked to get my ITC card, they were like, "Oh, this guy's a Brit." So then I started playing as that first kind of dual national role. I think it was, thank God Ken Taggart was actually pulling for me, because he knew I wanted to play, but I wasn't good enough to play as an import. So I started playing on the island. And I remember, I remember I scored a goal, but you guys beat us like 16-1. And then I remember coming back up to Streatham. And I was thinking about you as your role on the ice, because like you said, you could score your goals with your eyes closed. Anyone who knows Fred Perlini, goal scorer in the slot, puck on your stick, you're going to score. But I remember I was 19 and I was trying to make an impact, and I was trying to hit everybody and stuff. And you got your stick and you put it up my glove, and you were like, you gave me a little dig, and I was like, dang, it hurt. And you just said, "Cool your jets, kid."
Yeah.
You're just teaching me a little lesson, because I was trying to be like, "Hey, I'm gonna hit Fred Perlini." So,
well, that's awesome, Nick. That's awesome.
What was your?
Don't downgrade yourself, even though you played junior B, because you were a damn good player, a real good player.
Well, I appreciate that, and I do remember that year that we ended up in Guildford together, and that was the year that I really wanted to make an impression, because I was coming from the island and I'd worked out all summer, and that was when it was you and Troy Kennedy and Luke Shabbat and Terry Kurtenbach and Darren Zinger, and that was a fully loaded team. And I remember I started really well that year, and we had that coach Ivan Brown,
right?
And that guy he killed my soul. Like he didn't know how to nurture me. I know he did the same thing with Andy Sparks. Yeah. And I'm just trying to think now, for you, as your role as a player. Like I remember you putting your stick down my glove and giving me a little jib, and you scoring goals. But also, did you feel like a responsibility? Did you feel like when you stepped on the ice, you had a responsibility to be an ambassador? Yeah. Tell me about the responsibility that you felt on your shoulders. Yeah.
I'll tell you who guided me down that road was Alex Dampier. Because again, I didn't know anything about hockey, but I remember one time going to Durham when we were in Nottingham, and Cooper was just a kid, Ian, and he was sticking me. We were beating them, and they were the team, and he was sticking me, and I didn't know what age group they were or anything. So I grabbed him, I threw him down. We didn't actually, it was kind of more of a wrestling match. And I said, "Hey, kid, you want to keep your stick down," type of thing, but he was feisty, right? So after the game, I'll never forget, I talked to Alex Dampier, because I went over and apologized to Ian. He said, there's a lot of young kids in this league, in this country, Fred. He goes, they're not at your level status as far as not, we're not talking about being a player, but where you play. And he said, they really, really need your guidance. And I was like, oh, okay, especially like our team, Nottingham. So kids like the Coopers and, the names go on and on and on, like yourself and Sparksy and Guilford. And, you do start to feel a sense of responsibility where you're like, hey, I'm not just here collecting a paycheck and scoring goals. These kids are the future of the sport, whether they do well or they have kids that come into the sport. So that's when I started realizing, you know what, I've got to start helping more here. And you know what, Nick, that's why I really wanted to be a player coach mentor. I think I would have suited that if it was funded financially right. I think I would have suited that role playing better than an Ivan Brown, for example. When Nick comes in and he comes off the island, he's in good shape. Here's a kid that's playing with guys that have a name in the league. And Ivan knows nothing about the history of the game or where these kids come from. He wants you to play like a college style in Western Canada. He's trying to make a name for himself, but totally went about it the wrong way. Like me, even as a veteran, I had no respect for it. And so, and you get those kind of guys because they don't know the game over there. So I think where guys like, veteran players that played there a long time started to realize whether it was going out for a beer with these guys after the game, being a part of them. Like I always made, like I think Sparksy can tell you this, I always made it a point that I was never too good for the young guys, whether it was Billy Rawls, whether it was yourself, whether it was Sparksy, trying to make a point that, you know what, guys, you could do this. You can make a good living in the sport. You could give back yourselves,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you turn back the clock, the hockey side of it, if we practiced every day and we were on the ice all the time and it was a little bit more professional, you could do 100 times more with the younger kids, but only seeing them once in a while because they got to go to work, they got to do this, they got to do that. You didn't want to put too much pressure on them because I realized that, you know what, I'm making X amount of pounds. I've got a house, I've got a car, I can support my wife, my kids coming along, and there's, I don't know, Sparksy who's got to go to work 9 to 5 and then show up for practice at night, or vice versa, go to practice in the morning, then go to work, So and then play hockey on the weekends. So when you look back at, turn the clock back, Nick, that was tough on all the British kids, and I respected that a lot, and I would come back to Canada and people go, oh, what are you doing playing over there? You could go to Switzerland, you can go here, you can go there. I said, you know what? I actually really, really like the country. I really, the kids there. I like the atmosphere. Maybe I can make more money somewhere else, but you know what? I'm a part of the hockey scenario now, and I'm staying there. So, and it all transpired into our kids growing up. Like going into that direction, Nick. Eventually, staying in Guilford, I finally found a home with good schools for the kids, good area to bring your kids up. You lived it. Like when you went to Guilford, Nick, what did you feel about you? You knew the UK better than I did then, let alone the hockey market. But cities, like I don't think you could live in a better place, could you?
Oh no, Guildford was wonderful, and I ended my career there, and because I did the Sky Sports, and when Stan Marple was there, I think that was my last year. But yeah, Guildford was an amazing place, and it was a place that I really did see you, put down roots because I know you liked golf, and I know you'd spend some time on the course, and I did actually have a little visit over to your house one day, and I knew you got settled and you had the kids there. And you're now, I want to get into kind of like those last years of pro in Guildford, and then you carving your position in the world as a mentor and as a coach to young people. What was it like in those last few years playing?
It was great. So finishing off the last 3 years when you were around there, Nick, and then retiring, calling it a day at 35. John Hepburn said, "Look, Fred, when you're ready, I want you to run the program here, the minor, like from
Mm-hmm.
U19 and the teams down." And I said, "John, I don't know if I'm ready." I said, but I'm going to stay in the area. I started up my own, Vicky and I started up our own roller hockey business. We had 400 or 500 kids on the books. And like, I don't know if you remember our drug freeze program with Terry
Hmm.
Kirkback. Like Terry and I would go speak to the kids in the schools and educate them about our hockey program and staying away from drugs. And that's how all that started, and giving out hockey cards. Well, I got close to a lot of the school teachers and kids. So I started up roller hockey with the schools and the kids. And we started up a business that just kind of boomed. And then I said to John, John is like CEO Morgan Stanley, owner of the Flames, right? If people don't know that. So I said to John, John, I really think I can teach. I think I'm ready. So he basically hired me the next year to run the program. Um, who was it? Mike. He's in Nottingham now. Mike Urquhart was running it in the assistant flame. So he went to Nottingham, and it was really good the way it worked out. So he didn't have to get fired and me come in. It
Hmm.
really went back to Nottingham with Laura and his daughter and did the same thing there, and had a lot of respect for Mike. So I got the job, and Nick, it was really, really special because I really felt like I found my purpose. Like, it wasn't like an ego thing. It was really nice teaching kids. It
Yeah.
wasn't really about being successful as a coach and moving into Stan Marple's job. Down the road, I could have had that job. I didn't want it. I loved what I was doing. I loved being
Mm.
out on ice actually at 5:30 in the morning on a Sunday with any team.
Yeah.
John Hep out there helping me. It brought me back to my days when I was a
Yeah.
kid playing out for hockey. So that's
Yeah.
where I found this, and it just snowballed. It snowballed into so many good things for me.
Let's get into that in a minute. I want to wrap up your pro career in Guildford. I want to ask you, what are your highlights of actually Fred Perlini stepping on the ice? In all those different rinks that you played in, all the way from the Isle of Wight, and all the way up to Fife, all the memories, the smells, the fans. What are your memories of being a professional hockey player in the UK? Just give us your highlights.
I think the first highlight would be winning the Norwich Union Cup in Nottingham with all those kids. We really achieved something. And I think, the other, besides scoring goals or big goals or whatever, I think the last highlight is in Guildford, is not necessarily with the uniform on, but getting my number retired. And
Mm.
it was like an appreciation, some respect there on, what you did in the country, even though I didn't stay in one place for a long, long time. Guildford still did that for me. And then staying in that community and being a part of that community, that was a big highlight for me and my family. Honestly, it wasn't about scoring that big goal, but so I had the introduction to the UK hockey there with the Norwich Union Cup, and then ending it with retirement, getting your shirt retired. That was really special.
And that's the end of the second period. And we're gonna just jump straight into the third period, Fred. Okay, because we were getting in on it, and that you mentioned the word purpose a couple of times, and you getting on the ice at 5:30 in the morning, and I do, like I say, I remember you clear as bell, being an amazing teammate, an amazing guy to watch, to mentor. To You always had this kindness. You didn't judge. You were always supportive. Your language, your tone, how you addressed younger players in the team were amazing. And like I say, you're always going to place in my heart for the way you were kind to me as a teammate. And
And Nick, I
and
really appreciate that. I really, really appreciate that. That means a lot to me.
oh, buddy, you deserve it. And like I say, it's visceral. I can feel it. And I can remember that changing room, and I remember you know the way you'd call us kids and kiddo, and it was beautiful. And I just love the way you talk about now how you rekindled that. In the first period, we were talking about the love of the game and the early morning ice sessions, and now your pro career has come to a twilight, and now you're stepping on the ice with John and those kids at 5:30 in the morning. And what was that feeling like? What did you like? Where did this? What was the spark again about going from playing pro, putting the numbers on the board, to I'm playing again. I'm Fred and I'm playing. I'm having fun.
Yeah. Um, so special, Nick. It was like John was the driving force. He was like what impressed me was I watched this guy from CEO Morgan Stanley, fundraise, or sorry, fund the Guildford Flames, but yet be on the ice at 5:30 in the morning with the kids. And he kind of, I kind of looked at his work ethic and I go, you know, um, I could do this. I could give back in a way where I watched John and all his. Sorry, Nick, I got the dog over here barking. Can we
It's
stop
okay.
1 minute?
Okay, let
She's
me just pause. I'll pause. Go.
okay. Give me 1 sec. What's
Okay,
up,
I'm gonna.
Suri?
Maybe I should pause it. Yeah, I'll pause it.
Vicky, Vicky's a crazy pickleball player, so she left to go play pickleball. She took the dog for a walk. The dog come back, starts screaming to go outside here while we're talking. I can't even think. So,
But you're still even beautiful to your dog. Just so you were talking about how, like, John Hepburn, and he's a guy who he owned the team. He actually supported me in my first startup business too. I don't know if you know that, but when I was
oh
like yeah, so he actually like was an investor in my first ever company, and he said things to me back in 1995, 1996 that I still use and practice today. Very, very
yeah,
influential man. Very
yeah,
I think people think about I suppose his financial wealth, but his presence as a human being is like when you're around him, you can really feel it. And I
yeah,
like the way you talk about work ethic, and it's something that we look at as hockey players as having a very, very high work ethic. But you looked at John, the COO of Morgan Stanley, or vice chairman. I think he has different positions there. He's very high up.
yeah,
Not a natural born athlete, but a natural born
yeah.
leader and someone that can inspire still.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so what he did was, like, for me, he was a light of ray as far as his work ethic and being successful in his business. But he loved hockey so much. He played it in North Bay, Ontario. He wanted a good hockey program. He had 4 boys coming up. But what I learned from him, it's not like, hey, here's Fred Perlini, I'm on the ice, I know everything, just do what I do. I watched how he got really engaged. I watched how his work ethic was. And I took an example of that and thought, if he's given me this opportunity, I'm going to run with this, but I'm going to be the best version of a hard worker, somebody coming to the rink to really give back to these kids. And that's when, bang, Nick, I found my purpose. I really found my purpose. So getting there at 5:30 in the morning on Sunday. So my day on a Sunday, Nick, I'd be on the ice with, say, 5 teams in the morning till 11:30. And then no teams were playing, if the Flames were in town that night, John had me doing some broadcasting with Sparksy. But if our teams were on the ice, have to be at every game, like from 5 o'clock on till 8:30. There she goes again.
So
Hold on.
you can barely hear it. It's all good.
Okay.
Unless it's
Okay.
yeah, it's kind of cute.
Well,
It's fine.
Terry, enough. Come on over here. Come on. Come on over here. Come on here.
Is Suri the black poodle?
She's she's a Portuguese water dog. She's named after, obviously, Shuri. This
Yeah.
is enough. Okay? Listen to me. This is enough.
I follow Fred's Facebook page, and so I get to see
Yeah.
pictures of the dog. Pretty awesome dog.
Sorry about that.
No
She's
worries.
so when Vicky leaves, she's a big family dog, but when Vicky leaves, she usually I take her for a little walk. But okay, no worries. Let's get back into it.
Yeah. You finding your purpose.
Yeah. So working with these kids, I really, really found a purpose. Like, again, the days were long, the hours were a lot. It was very demanding. It's bigger than a pro job. But when you love something and you have a purpose with it, you realize that, like for me, those years in hockey were so important to me. Yeah, my kids were starting to come up, Nick, but I knew all the kids playing hockey pretty much across the UK. And I realized this is what I wanted to do when I first got there after a few years of playing pro hockey, like run an organization or help run one, and finding a purpose. And in those days, it wasn't just about the money. It was about kind of the feeling. When I say purpose, it's about kind of giving back. You feel like you're giving back, and it feels so good. It's not about you. It's not about your own kid being successful. It's about seeing the smiles on their faces, seeing the Guildford kids develop, go through the ranks, and then end up playing on the pro team. And a lot of those kids that I coached right from 10 years old, like Hemmings, the Savvy, the lists go on. They end up playing pro hockey, and I got a real joy out of that. And our program eventually, I think, Nick, if you put passion into anything and inspiration, people will follow you. And all of a sudden, kids started coming out of the woodwork that wanted to play for Guildford, from the roller hockey, from other teams. We were John made me a big shooting area in the cul-de-sac that we lived in, because all the Flames lived in there and I had a house. So I used to do shooting for the program on Friday nights. My poor wife would have a house full of kids. She would sit outside with the mums or dads, and I'd be doing shooting lessons for the kids in our program. And then we do roller hockey for them with the hockey. So it was like 24/7, 7 days a week. But come the end of May, I go home, shut her down, get away from hockey or what have you, and get back at it in September. And this happened for, oh geez, I don't know. I want to say an extra 10 years, because Brendan grew up in the hockey program. Brett grew up in the hockey program, and I used to get these quips from people, because you were a pro player, like, your kids are never going to play hockey if they're playing over in the UK. They got to get back to Canada. And I said, you know what? I actually think they get better training, not because of me, but because of me and the coaches we have there, that care about hockey, and really want them to do well, not just my kids, but other kids. I think they get better training there than they would in Canada. And they said, well, they're not going to get the competition, the tournaments. I said, well, our Guildford teams travel all over Europe and play hockey. So when I look back, and you kind of know where Brett and Brendan went, but when I look back, I asked my kids, I go, I got to ask you, you're older men now. Do you feel like you were robbed from anything? They said, Dad, we wouldn't change a thing. And I'm so proud of that, Nick. And we still keep in touch, me and my boys and my wife, with a lot of the kids that are like in their 20s or 30s now, that we worked with or coached, that came up through the Guildford ranks. And that's so important to me. So, um,
Fred, when I look at your life and I look at, you've been with Vic all this time, and you're a devoted husband, for, the shenanigans and stuff that happened in hockey teams and stuff like that. You were always known as a good husband, loyal and supportive. And then, you have these two sons that are growing up, and yeah, they both have very, very successful hockey careers, and I saw Brent up in Nottingham, when he was with GB a few months ago, and just I wouldn't have known him back then, because he would have, I know he had buds, but I don't think Brett was born maybe
so
when I was still there.
So Brett was born first, and Bubs was
Sorry.
born right in Guildford, but Brett left when he was 14 years old. So that's probably why so Brett left, he was living with our family back in Canada, right, at 14 years old. So that's probably why you remember Bubs.
I just remember Brandon being a little guy skating around the ice.
Yeah.
Okay, but and I see pictures on Facebook of you guys and of the boys growing up. They're becoming young men. They're very successful, getting married, having kids. You're going to be a granddad soon, and it's perfect. Like, I don't want to say it looks perfect. It does. It looks beautiful, and I know you as a human being, so I know you've nurtured this amazing family that can talk about emotions, and you've instilled in the young men the ability to process emotions and to cry if they need to. And I know Brandon speaks openly about emotions, being in the NHL and the challenges that you said that he has right now. Has it always been perfect? What have been the things that we don't see, and that maybe some of the things that you can highlight to give people a little bit of insight into some of the challenges?
Yeah, Nick, it's never, ever been perfect. We work hard at it all the time. It's like, we're not the perfect family. Like, my boys, everybody thinks, oh, they've done this, they've done that. You should be very proud. I am very proud, but they have problems and issues like everybody else. Vic and I, Vicky's, I think you know us. Vicky's a very strong lady. She is, she keeps the glue together. Like I find like when, we're weak as men, whether it's anxiety, depression, whatever we're going through because of the battles in sport or, with sport, professional sport, Nick, there's so many, the journey is so up and down, this, and it's hard. Um, it's just nice, I think, as a family to bounce your problems off of each other and work together. I think that's where we are at in life. Like when Brendan has issues now, he knows openly that he could call me and talk to me about anything. And that's what's important. When I have issues or problems, I can do the same thing with Vicky. If all else fails, we all go to Vicky, it seems like. So we have a pattern in our family that we didn't plan, it just worked out that way. And I find that if you know, today, Nick, I'm always trying to educate myself with podcasts like Lewis Howes, Jay Shetty, how to be a better person, um, how to get over, anxiety, emotions, or as we get older, or, this is so important in our lives today.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the bottom line is with us, nothing is perfect, but keeping an open concept to work out things together really, really helps us, whether that's sport, whether that's real life, whether that's just sitting at the supper table.
Yep. And I'm just thinking like, I remember you scoring like dozens of goals in Guildford in that slot area, low slot, you had this quick little release and you could get the puck into any corner and the crowd would go nuts and chant your name. And then you got your jersey retired. And like, are there times where you sit, in bed or on the patio and you're like, oh man, I really miss those days and I feel like there's something inside of you missing it all? Or do you feel like it was all
Yeah.
complete?
Yeah. I think that's a good question, Nick. I think like that's probably the hardest thing to let go is when you let the game go. But I think because of the teaching part of it for me, it keeps me involved. Like I think I told you, I'm like right now, I'm 61 years old and I'm running a hockey program, a prep school in Detroit. So I work in the States in the winter. We run our hockey schools up in Canada in the summer. I think if I didn't have that, it would be really, really tough on me. And again, I didn't plan that. I think I've just directed myself into that because I wanted to keep moving forward and giving back. And I think if that's the purpose, if so, I always tell myself, okay, well, when I go to the rink every night, well, how can I help these kids? So I'm working again with 5 to 19-year-olds, about 10 teams. I've got to work with coaches. I've got to work with kids. I've got to coach my own team and travel with it. I do still work with pros privately, juniors and pros. If I didn't have that, it's not about money, Nick. If I didn't have that, I mean, I don't know because I go back home now. All the guys my age are retired, and they go, "When are you going to retire?" I go, "I can't retire." They go, "What do you mean? You need money?" No, because it's a purpose for me. I don't I wouldn't know how to fill that void, you know. So I haven't
So
got to that. You know what I mean? Where you can't
yeah,
skate or walk, or you know what I mean? Maybe it's just a reflection period when you're in your 70s. I don't know, but I'm
I
going
think
to keep going as long as I can.
I think it's such an important message for anybody who's played a sport, particularly hockey, because this is a hockey podcast at any level. And I know like what we got paid and, well, you got paid more than I did. Like I got about 190 pounds a week, that's not 190,000 that they get in the premiership. And when I stopped playing, I still had the same loss. I still had the same loss of identity. Even though, like I said, I was a third line hockey player, I still lost that purpose. And Fred, I got the job of a lifetime. I got the job that everybody wanted on Sky Sports, and I was
Right.
making more money on Sky than than most of the guys in the Super League.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and I was flying around the country, and I had a clothing allowance, and a stylist who would bring me to Selfridges or Savile Row and buy all these things for me, and. So this is at the time when you were ending your career and I ended my career and I started at Sky. but I felt like a fraud and an imposter, and I didn't deserve any of it. And I didn't. I know you probably remember. I wasn't a drinker as a player.
No,
I very
no,
no
I don't remember that at all. I don't
no,
remember.
and it. But it was when I stopped playing and I started hanging out in Soho with other guys who'd stopped playing, who had a little bit of money, and they introduced me to, party, drugs, and alcohol, and that all of a sudden made me feel like I belonged, like it gave me some kind of
Right,
connection, and that's
right,
when I really started to struggle. But it was really the big thing of me losing my identity as an athlete, and all of a sudden being a guy on TV. I had no training for that. I had no way of coping with that,
right,
and then
right,
I went down this spiral of addiction and alcoholism. And I
right.
think it's just so important for any hockey player listening to this podcast is to
Yeah,
make sure that you have some kind of purpose
yeah,
set up for when you hang up the skates.
I totally agree. So I look at Brendan and the circles that he's in. So much like you were, Nick, in those high level circles, and you could go one way or the other, just to fit in. You don't want to be that loner guy. You don't want to be, in the hockey circle. So this is where with Brendan, um, you know, he he's kind of a deep kid. He's a thinker and he's a researcher, and I'd love you to have a heart-to-heart conversation with him, because he's got friends that have done that, come out of it, and but it affects you as well, because your friends are going through it and how you deal with it. And I think the most important message is, Nick. I mean, you've done it and you've come out on the other end and you're doing so well, and I'm very proud of you. Is I you would know better than me. Is you got to be open about it, and you got to have somebody to turn to for help. I think that's the biggest thing, and I tell my sons that. I said, Brendan, if mom and I can't help you when you're struggling, because he does struggle with his career up and down right now. I
Mm-hmm.
said, you got to have you got to have professional help. You got to have whatever you need. Reach out to people, you know. And it's these things are not easy. They're
No.
not.
Well,
You're like, when I look at you, Nick. You're such a good person. You're such a good person. You were a great kid. You've turned, after hockey, you have this beautiful profession. Good looking kid, beautiful profession, and then this happens to you, and maybe it happened for a reason, and you're out of it, and now you're because life, we all want the best things in life. We all want money, finances, the best cars, the best houses, the best looking wives, whatever. Sometimes that's not what it's all about, and I've learned that. And I think my kids learn that. Like, quick story on Brendan. Nelly Corda, the number one golfer in the world, wanted to date Brendan at one time. He didn't want to date her. It's just like, that's the kind of kid he is. He's like, it's not about the looks or what she does. She's a nice person, but we don't match up. I'm like too deep for her. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, um, so I guess my point is, it's not about uh, money or fame or whatever. When we all get that at some point, whether we can handle it or not, it's still not about that. I know people that are wealthy, rich, and they go, and that are depressed, Nick. And I
Yes.
go, and they go, it's just, it happens, and I don't
Yep.
know why. I go, because it's not about the money. It's
Mm.
about the purpose and who you are. And like,
Yeah.
when you explain this to me, Nick, about like you felt like what'd you say it was, like a false.
A fraud and an imposter. Yeah.
Why did you feel like that?
Well, because I felt like everything I got was through like that I didn't deserve it because I grew up quite a scared child. When your dad's an
Yeah,
alcoholic, you grow up
yeah,
kind of scared and you develop these coping mechanisms. And I became a very,
okay,
very, like you said, I became very charming and manipulative, even though I didn't
right,
drink or do. So I felt like I charmed my way into the job at Sky and that I didn't deserve it, even though those people knew I was really good for the job. I felt like I bullshitted my way into it. I felt like a bullshitter,
right,
And when I was driving into Guildford and I had a Porsche and I had all those clothes from Sky, I felt like I didn't deserve it, and
right,
then the drugs and the alcohol took that pain with fear away, so then I could just kind of
right,
breathe.
right,
But what happened to me, Fred, and we'll kind of end up on is because we're talking about purpose, is that at 45 years old, I finally said, "Help me." because I was a broken man. I was dying of alcoholism in a squat in Toronto. I had liver failure, kidney failure, acute pancreatitis. And I was always taught that real men sort out all their own problems. So, and I knew I had an issue for 15 years, but I had no voice or language or ability to say, help me, until I was almost dead. And then I said, help me. And in saying, help me, I fulfilled another man's purpose. And this is why saying help me isn't just for you. It's about the guy you're saying help me to, because they've got a purpose. Like the young kids that come to you for hockey, they're helping you as much as you're helping them, because you're
Right.
fulfilling your purpose as a mentor and
Right.
as a hockey coach.
Right.
And that gave me then purpose. And
Right.
purpose is like what you just said. It's helping people. Has nothing to
Right.
do with the car or the watch or the money. It's about how we make a
Yeah.
positive impact on other people and being
Yeah.
good at doing that.
Right.
And that's purpose.
Right. That's very well put. You're very well spoken, Nick. Honestly, that is very, very well put. I think you got so much more to give. Like even like because I know a lot of these pro players. I've like there's a lot of guys I see them recovering alcoholics that Dave Shan is one of them. First round pick, third overall to Atlanta. I played with him in Toronto's organization. You know, I don't want to talk about all his bad habits, but you know, the last 10 years he's been clean. I'm so proud of him. But I think what you just spoke of and how you spoke to, like, you've got so much more to give, like to pro athletes alone, you know, just what you went through. But that's amazing. I'm so proud of you, honestly, honestly.
Oh, thanks, Fred.
I couldn't
From you,
say
it means a lot.
it good. I could not say it that good. Knowing me and my own purpose, I feel all those things you feel, like maybe not to the point of alcohol and all that, but like the only things that always drive me are like giving back, service, purpose, giving back, service, purpose. And that's how I move forward today. You know, and I feel good about it. Instead of saying sitting somewhere and drinking with a bunch of guys saying, yeah, I could have did this and I could have did that. And you know, I don't live like that, you know? And
No,
you know, and the other thing is with us in our family, what I find, Nick, we really don't sit in our house and talk hockey all the time. We'll talk football, you know, Man United, golf, a little bit of sports, but we talk about things we want to learn and knowledge. And it always comes back to learning, knowledge, and giving, learning, knowledge, and giving, you know. And I don't know, I guess I've seen so many people suffer, including me and my family and my mom and dad. And over the years, I just kind of figured this out a little bit on my own and started educating myself with podcasts. Like I said, Lewis Howell, Jay Shetty, I follow them all the time.
yeah,
And they're down that road that you're on.
yeah.
And I'm glad to hear that we're all doing good these days, you know?
And let's end the third period, Fred.
Awesome. So
Okay.
nice.
It is. But I am just going to give you a quick little overtime question, just running off of what we're talking about, just kind of how it feels. But I'm going to go back to the changing room in Guildford, and this is going to be hopefully something that we can help to inspire, because it's going to be both of us, this overtime bit. But let's go back to that changing room in Guildford in the season 96, 97 season, I think, which is the one that I was with you guys, or the first, or 95, 96 with
Yeah.
Ivan Brown.
Yeah.
And that's when I started struggling with my identity, because I was going to university and I
Yeah.
was playing hockey, and I felt
Yeah.
like I didn't really fit into either environments. And I was just a young kid who didn't have the voice or the language to look up to an older guy like you and say, Fred, you know, I'm struggling with this.
Yeah.
So let's pretend that we're back then. And I said, and I'm in that changing room early in the morning or after the gym or something like that. And I was like, Fred, you know, like, you're a veteran. I'm struggling a little bit with my identity.
Mm-hmm.
How would you and I have worked that out? And I know this is just it's
Well,
a hard question to put on you.
Like I wasn't probably as educated as I am now or aware of that stuff as I am now. But the first thing I'd ask you, well, what's bothering you, Nick? Is it the hockey? Is it the coach? Is it school? You know, and then you know, would you spill your guts though? You know what I mean? Would you spill your
That's the
guts?
thing. I
And then,
probably
and I
this would be
kind of guy that would go to somebody like a Todd Bidner, who's a drinker and a good friend and funny, and say, Nick is weak, and he's not mentally strong or mentally tough. But I can see all that happening in those days. But the first thing I think I would do, my first instinct is I would ask you questions, and I would say, Nick, if I can't get you help, do you think, if I go find somebody that can get you help, let's do it. You know what I mean? Because I don't think I think on a simple platform, I could probably be somebody you can always talk to.
Yeah,
And
that's what I felt like. I did feel like
yeah,
you would have been the guy that I would, but this is the thing, Fred. It's such a tough thing because I had no ability to say, Fred, I'm struggling,
I wish you would have. I wish you would. I
Yeah.
wish I'd done that at times too. Because Nick,
Mm,
I was struggling with different things like, like I said, anxiety, depression. I remember going through that in Streatham. I'm like, what am
mm,
I doing? Like I didn't dislike Streatham. It wasn't Guildford. There wasn't a team or the guys. It was all still going to the same rink, but I just didn't know. I think that was a breaking point in my career of what am I doing? Am I
mm.
going to just keep scoring goals and making 400 pounds a week? And like Steve James, another nice guy, like these people would always make it happen. I go, Vic, I can't keep doing this. We either go home or I find something better for our family. Not about hockey, Nick. About the atmosphere. What am I doing long term? And the long term for me was the kids giving back, working with coaching or my knowledge, what I learned, giving to them. And Nick, it's funny. It's really really funny you asked that question because now when I'm coaching these 15-year-olds, a lot of stuff happens in the dressing room with education, and it's not even hockey wise. It's more about staying away from drugs, staying away from alcohol. Do you have issues with your buddies? Do not be a bully. Are you getting bullied at school? Let me help you with this. I feel like I'm more of a psychologist than a hockey coach, honestly. And in my little hockey world, I'm very well liked. Yeah, okay, I know my hockey and I know, and we do get successful. I don't think it's because of that. I think it's because I get close to the kids and I'm an open book to them. I really believe that. It has nothing to do with being a hockey coach. Um, so, I really wish you would have. I mean, but look, it's turned out good for you, right?
Oh yeah, I think everyone's path is their path. I needed to go to those dark bits so that other men, when I speak about those dark bits and ending up in jail in Thurlow
Yeah,
Penitentiary in St. Catharines, people can say, "Wow, how did you get out of that? How did it feel?" And then they can resonate with me. So yeah, I wouldn't change anything. I'm just trying to figure out ways where people listening to this podcast can identify with being a young mid-20s guy, maybe not feeling like they fit in,
all
and
right.
looking upon, someone who's a veteran of the team and being able to go up to them and say, hey, you know what, I'm struggling with something, because it saves people's lives. Help me, or I'm struggling, or I'm being challenged with this area.
Yeah.
It's such a courageous thing for people to
Okay.
do. And
A perfect scenario, what should happen, Nick? What should happen? Like that older guy, you identify, oh, those guys are like the party guys on the team. There's the older guy that's married. He kind of maybe would listen to me. What should happen? Should a guy like that reach out and say, I mean, I think a guy like that today, being more educated, can help you with a lot of the facets of what's bothering you or the addictions or whatever, but they still have to direct you in the right path, right?
I think
Don't
I think I think what it is what you have, which is trust. I think that young players have got to trust somebody, knowing that they're not going to be judged, and that knowing that they've had their own struggles. So you being as
I,
a coach, being open about your struggles, so that young players can go, well, I'm going to open up if I'm having some struggles. And then it's just like you said, listening and really listening, and then being able to
yeah,
ask a few questions, and then being able to direct that person to the correct resources that most teams have available. But I do know
yeah,
that coaches and managers are hard people to talk to, because
yeah,
players fear that they're going to be benched, or they fear they're going to lose their position on the team. So it's really important to have that veteran on the team, or the person that people look up to as being that guy
yeah.
that can support a younger player through just being able to just to let it out and to
Well,
not
that's
be judged.
That's what happened to Brendan. So Brendan, this guy that I was talking about, he played. Like I said, he was with Tampa Bay, and he played with Brendan in Chicago, and he played with Brendan in Edmonton, and he'd always sit beside Brendan, and he spilled his guts out to Brendan, and he was suffering, Nick. He was suffering with depression, anxiety. He was tired of seeing the whiteboard every morning, him not playing. And he was a defenseman, and he finally retired. He still keeps in touch with Bubs. He's from Ottawa. And he said, Brendan, I feel I'm in a really good place. He goes, I feel really good. He just got back from some big trip where actually I can send you the videos where like he was what do you call that when you're out there, lions, tigers, what kind of trips are those, like out
Safari.
like a safari trip? He actually sent us a video of where a lion is going up a tree, or a tiger with a zebra in its mouth.
Wow.
This kid, but anyways, this guy was suffering so bad, Nick. And like Brendan, like I think just with a natural instinct, would answer his questions would be, he would ask me, and I said, just be kind to him. Just be kind. Then Brendan started falling into those, because they don't want to be seen as a weak link. Yeah. That's what I at the NHL level, because, and see, Nick, this is another factor. Concussions, like Brett and Brendan both had concussions. And I think that's what happened with Brendan. He had a bad concussion like last year, and that really affected him that way. His emotions changed, and the NHL Players Association shut him down. They put a sports psychologist on him. They shut him. He's in a good place now, but so I think like the judgment factor is such a big deal. It's like, so now it's like, who can you trust? Like you've mentioned the word trust. Can I trust Brendan more? Will he think I'm weak? You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what he's dealing with right now. He's dealing with that. Yeah. So I'm like, Brendan, you know what? You are what you are. In our eyes, mom and dad's eyes, we love you more as a person than a hockey player. So always remember that. If it doesn't work out the way you really want your career to work out, who cares? We don't care. As long as you're finding your way and being happy, that's all we care about. What else are you supposed to say, Nick? And that's coming from my heart,
I think this is the thing is we need to say, Brandon, Brett, you are my sons who play hockey. You're not my hockey player sons, right? Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And from the atmospheres we grow up in, like say the Sioux, for me anyways, there's so much pressure once you're a hockey player to be a top hockey player that if you're not, you failed. And that's how a lot of people start drinking and doing drugs in my town, because of that. And they can't live with it. And I'm like I say, I don't care. My career ended up the way it ended up. I'm not the strongest by any means, but I'm like, I'm going to move forward here. I'm always going to find a way. The game gave. So Nick, that positive, negative thing. I always look at all. It's not automatic, but I always look at all the positives the game gave me, and it gave me a lot, whether it was in the UK or the National League, AHL, minor hockey. The game gave me so much. And that's what I try to look at, but yeah. So, but I'd really like you to talk to Brendan one day.
We'll set up a call. Because I'd love to have a little catch up with the guy, because I just remember him just scooting around the ice on Guildford. So
a little bit deeper than Brett. Brett's a really good kid, and Brett's a smart kid, but Brendan's kind of a little bit deeper in what we're talking about. Like Nick, go online and look at it's not the Hockey Night in Canada interview. It's an interview when the Oilers weren't doing good, and they put him on the podium, and people still text me about that stuff.
I remember it. I saw it.
You did. Okay. Yeah. So my point is, he deals with this stuff personally. That's why he's good at it. He knows how to handle it, and I think you two could have a really good conversation. I really do.
It. Yeah, I would love it, Fred. And this conversation has been long time coming, and I can't thank you enough for your time today, buddy. I really appreciate you taking part in the Repurpose podcast.
Yeah, well, definitely stay in touch and let me know when it comes out. And I'll do whatever you need me to do for yourself, and I'm always here, bud. So, if you need to give me a call, give me a call.
Thanks, Fred. You're awesome, buddy.
Okay, you too, bud. Take care.
Take it
We love you.
easy.
We
Bye.
love you.
Love you too, buddy. Love you too.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, bye.